quite frankly, this scares people.
Join the conversation. We have seen this movie before. We know that it doesn't end well.
Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We have a lot of comments and things that come in over there. Already dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate Amber Banda, Flaco Jimenez, and more tuning in as well. Do appreciate it because it helps with all those algorithmic things. We also mentioned those pages. I mean, the likes are on the Facebook, but also, of course, the other pages where we are, because regardless of how you interact with the platform, you can make comments if you want to see the show, the graphics, the interviews we have, particularly today. Going to be having to change it up a little bit today. Don't worry, we'll still be doing calls, comments, stories locally affecting us as we usually do. But as I have kind of warned, given election season and how there is, damn near 50 different candidates and nominees and such that we are trying to get through in this season, this is one of those days that we are going to be doubling up, having two of our interviews today, one in hour one and one in hour two of the program. So yes, I can already hear someone out there saying, what is that going to mean for the calls? Yeah, it's going to be curtailed slightly, but okay, if it's consolation, Friday is coming up, but these are also two of our most commented on candidates so far, so we wanted to make sure we got these in short order. So today, interviews. We're going to be talking with a Republican nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District. That is Irene Armendariz Jackson, about her campaign and, of course, the issues at play in our area. And then in the second hour of the program, we're going to be interviewing the independent candidate for El Paso County Judge Guadalupe Jenner about, well, her campaign and specifically the choice she has made in that designation of running, as well as a whole lot more. So we'll still be getting to some other issues, don't worry, but Election Day is less than about a 2/3 of a month away. That's not really how you divide months, I know, but it's creeping up on us, and we got a lot that we'll be getting into here as we have Eric von Holstein, Rathlow, Amber Banda, Robbie Flores, and Austin Redfern. Afternoon to you as well. And otherwise, a lot of hand signals. Also, Glenn Stewart. Excited about the interview. I mean, we're trying to be responsive to the audience here. So, yes, we will be delving into that as, again, congressional coverage is something that we're trying to do a decent amount of this time around for this election cycle. Does not mean by any means we're ignoring other races, but hell, there's a lot of issues to delve into here and a lot of focus happening in our region. And well, that's one of the reasons that we are focusing on that, among other things. So at least one, I and Eric Van Holstein Rathwell excited as well. At least one thing I wanted to mention here, because the talk about El Paso's workforce and what they're actually willing to do has been more than a little bit of a discussion, and is kind of related to some of the questions we're going to get into with our political campaigns, again, a little bit later in the program. But at least wanted to mention, again, this interesting one from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, showing that another study of El Paso's workforce finds about just over 10%, so about 1 in 10 people in the workforce here in El Paso self-employed. Now, I'm gonna say I wasn't necessarily surprised by this, but seeing it actually laid out like that, I guess, really just kind of drives home the fact that, I mean, you drive around the roads around El Paso. You don't even have to explicitly know anyone, but the amount of cars, vehicles, whatever, that have little magnet signs on them for someone's shingle, whether it be, them providing landscaping or other services like that, whether it be someone with, exercise, workout routines, nutrition assistance, those kind of things. I see a lot of it, and everyone has it on their car around El Paso. I mean, it's definitely a thing around here. So the fact that it's actually 1 in 10 is, well, very interesting. And done by Self Financial, doing a report on U.S. cities with the most self-employed workers. And El Paso was, again, ranking decently high with them. And Flaco Jimenez say, okay, this was kind of the balance we were trying to strike here. We definitely want to, keep things consistent, still do the things that we do. I hope we do well on this program, but Flaco Jimenez maybe putting my mind at peace at us squeezing in interviews today, saying the interviews are important and better than listening to some of the callers. Again, your mileage may vary and your opinion may differ, but again, we're in election season, so bear with us as we get through this next month and change, because, of course, we got a lot going on there. And so, again, interesting view on just El Paso's workforce, that we have a lot of self-employed, not necessarily putting us in the top 10 or anything according to this study, but the fact that it's 1 in 10. Now, whether or not that totally includes people who have a side hustle or something like that, also Ida Beza-Gardner, and other interviews and other opinions being expressed, such as Eric McNabb, who doesn't like candidates. You're entitled to your opinion, but we're going to hear from them. That's kind of what we do on this show, and then we can discuss them here. So we'll, of course, get more into that, but I just want to at least mention at least some of the things going on. And Eric von Holstein-Rathel making an interesting point. When I became self-employed, I thought it meant I could choose my hours. Well, it's a choice between 10 and 14 hours a day, or as I like to think about it, between most or all of the hours of the day is the way I kind of feel about it sometimes. So, yeah, I'm not saying I qualify as totally self-employed, but given the way we do things on the show, sometimes it kind of feels like it. I love my bosses and everything they do, if anyone's listening. Anyway, of course, we got to take that first break, already through that first time of the hour. Plus, we got some extended interviews coming up. So... and a lot more comments coming in. Keep those comments going, as we will, of course, pop the ones that are particularly most relevant to what we're talking about at that point in time during the interviews up on screen. Otherwise, of course, calls in an abbreviated way a little bit later in the show. Again, we'll be dipping in and out. For those just joining us, we are going to be having 2 political interviews today, one with Irene Armendariz Jackson, the Republican nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District, challenging, of course, incumbent Democrat Veronica Escobar for that seat, as well as in the second hour, we're going to be interviewing independent candidate or nominee. Well, yeah, I guess that's technically the correct phrase, for county judge, because that is a partisan seat, even though she's running nonpartisanly. We'll go through a bit of that story. But, of course, going for county judge, again, they're challenging incumbent Democrat, again, County Judge Ricardo Samaniego. So, also Ida Beza-Gardner mentioning mentioning an important thing, that League of Women Voters does have a candidate forum today at 5:30. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe this one is based on city council. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do try to mention some of them as they come up here. But in any case, we're going to dive into our coverage going on today, talking with some of the candidates and some of the at least most commented on races that we have on this program. So all that and more coming up. You are, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Comments still going on. Calls again in the way we're going to have to do it today, with us taking 2 interviews during the show. But all that and more to come after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso police on scene of an accident, Gateway North at Dyer. An emergency vehicle is blocking the right shoulder, I-10 westbound at the Porfirio on-ramp. A stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder, I-10 westbound at the Hunter Viscount exit. And Macomb Street is still closed due to that down power pole between the 54 Gateway and Stan Roberts, as emergency crews work on getting that pole back up. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
News Radio 690, KTSM, and Scott Heating and Cooling want to provide a local veteran with a heating and cooling system upgrade. Tell us about a deserving veteran you know who would benefit from a free new refrigerated AC unit. Who are they? How have they positively impacted you, their families, and the community? Nominate a veteran you know today at ktsmradio.com.
This report is sponsored by Texas Secretary of State.
Did you know that in Texas, there are 7 approved photo IDs you can choose from to take to the polling site? You can find the full list of the approved IDs you can use to vote on our website. Get vote ready at votetexas.gov or by calling 1-800-252-VOTE. Brought to you by the Texas Secretary of State.
At Affordable Dentures and Implants, that moment when we see a patient smile is everything to us. And we're proud to have helped millions of patients improve their smiles through affordable tooth replacement options. So whether it's a single tooth, full dentures, or dental implants, Affordable Dentures and Implants is here to help you. Go ahead and smile. Our new El Paso office, led by Dr. Kiso Uradiegu, is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. To schedule a free new patient consultation, call 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. That's 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. Again, our new El Paso office is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. Affordable dentures and implants. Go ahead and smile.
Go ahead and smile.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. Annual enrollment is from October 15th to December 7th. This is the time to select a Medicare Advantage plan and start enjoying great benefits. Part C plans can help you add vision, dental, hearing, prescriptions, gym membership, and some plans can even help reduce the cost of Part B. If you are new to Medicare or just need to renew, Medicare Prepare is here to help. Visit them at 10295 North Loop Drive or call Medicare Prepare at 915-626-5113. In-home appointments available.
And Doug.
Hey, listener. Welcome to Limu's Karaoke Lounge, where Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need, and the music never stops. Hit it.
There's an emu with a full-time job. His partner's Doug, but Limu's the heartthrob. Grubs and worms, that's what Limu eats. Gotta fuel up to save you money and hit the streets.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Of course, a lot of stuff we're talking about here today, but election season, if you've not been paying attention at all, is definitely underway, and that's what we are going to be focusing on. But through November 8th and probably beyond in some cases, but at least one of the more well-focused on races, one that you all have been bringing up anyway, is of course the Texas 16th Congressional District. And so joining us now, we are joined by Irene Armendariz-Jackson, the Republican nominee for that seat. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Absolutely. Happy to visit with you again on, updated as we are, of course, on the cusp of early voting beginning as we are recording this interview, of course. So revisiting with you on some of the policies and, of course, some of the big issues going in our area is very important. So just in case for those who have not heard of this race, somehow reintroduce yourself and some of your background, please.
I'm Irene Armendariz-Jackson. I'm a native of El Paso. I was born and raised here. I grew up going to church in Ciudad Juarez. I actually spoke Spanish before I spoke English. I do have a master's degree. Of course, I've been a realtor since 1999. I've put that aside to hopefully serve my community after November the 8th in the upcoming 118th Congress. I'm sorry. But I am married. We're married. We've been married almost 29 years on November the 13th. We have 3 beautiful daughters. We have 4 grandbabies and 1 on the way. And so unfortunately, the state of the country is what got me involved. And even though I don't come from a political background, I think every citizen that is affected by the laws that are passed by Congress cannot stand on the sidelines anymore and see our country falling to pieces. And so I know that on November the 9th, I will wake up and know that I have given it my all to make sure that we preserve our American way of life, our freedoms, and even more for the future.
Well, and happy earlier anniversary for that matter.
Thank
here.
you.
So, of course, some of the major policies that you have been focusing on in this campaign, as a bit of kind of the dual ones we're going to focus on here, the economy, jobs, and of course, economics and things like that. But of course, border security as well. So on that first one, then the economy has been quite a bit of focus on this, of course, in this season, and particularly during this administration. From your perspective, and for if elected to this office, what are some of the major economic, job security, et cetera, kind of things that in policies that you would like to see put into place or that you would focus on?
We need to stop the spending. There's major factors that contribute to the inflation, which right now is at 9.3. And people say it's at the highest since the 80s. But if you look at the scale they used in the 80s, it has changed about a dozen times since the 80s. And so in reality, we're way over 11% if we use the same metrics that they used in the 80s. And people need relief. We need relief. We are knocking on doors and we're talking to people every day in the supermarket and gas stations, everywhere. We're having conversations with people from El Paso. And the number one issue is the economy. We need to stop the spending and stop printing money. And it's all connected, from the immigration crisis that we're feeling right now in El Paso to everything else. It all boils down to economy, because the government, if there's nothing else you remember from this interview, please, El Paso, remember that there's no such thing as government funding. You and I are the government funding, whether it's at the city, county, state, or federal. We are the funding for the government. The government doesn't have a money tree in the backyard that they can just pluck dollar bills. You and I will feel the brunt, and we're feeling it right now if this continues. So what I want is stop the spending, stop the printing of money, and let's make sure that Americans get back to the American way of life. And one of them is you have to get back to work. Let's make sure that our economy goes back to the strength that we had pre-Biden administration. We can go back to it, but things need to change immediately.
So obviously looking at budgetary focuses here, stopping
Absolutely.
the spending, and that'll of course be reflected, I'm assuming, whenever we come to, the next, budget talks, those kind of things, again, if elected. But particularly on the jobs then, again, from the federal perspective, as you
Sure.
are mentioning there, to make that work or to get people back to work, as you were saying, what are some of the policies that you'd like to see put into place, again, if elected to office, to achieve that goal?
Well, we want to make sure that El Paso does become a major hub. For too many years, the same people have controlled El Paso. I said it 2 years ago. It still continues to be the same thing. There is an understanding by the money and the political powers that be here in El Paso that they work hand in hand, and I feel like they've worked hand in hand to keep low wages. And the only way that wages go up outside of government, okay, one of the things that I want to focus is shrinking the federal government. This country was founded by we, the people. We always hear the phrase "follow the money," right? Follow the money. If you follow the money in America, where does it end up? It ends up in the people's pockets. We work for that money. We earn it. Shouldn't we decide how things go, and not our politicians? So because I come from a business background, my bachelor's is in business, been a realtor since 1999. I know how business works, and we want to make sure that we create competition. Competition raises the salaries because they're competing for our labor. And who wins? The American people win. Now, we want to make sure that we bring new industries into El Paso that have high-paying jobs, but not just high-paying jobs is our focus. It's the competition. It'll drive the salaries up, because good competition without the monopoly will the companies will fight for your labor, whether it's in construction, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's in technology. There's so much talk, but unless we open the markets and we create competition, just like they have it in Austin, Texas, you have every digital company there, and they compete for the labor, whether it's with a degree or non-degree labor, they still compete. So it drives the salaries up. We can do that in El Paso.
There's been some notable examples within the last couple of years, particularly, coming out of such federal policies as Pandemic Recovery Acts, Infrastructure Acts, those kind of things that have been publicized lately, or at least, again, in the last couple of years, when it comes to major grants, those kind of things, in order to essentially focus on developing different sectors of El Paso. But that, of course, is a spending focus to encourage that kind of competition. And the things that you've just discussed there in El Paso and in this region, outside of a spending focus, which you're sounding opposed to as well, how would you go about, therefore, fostering that in this region without doing
the
spending?
Extra spending? Well, basically, we've seen, unfortunately, I know the movie, Build It and They Will Come. They're building and they're not here. And they continue to build and build and build. And who foots the bill? We do. So if you make an incentive for these big companies, maybe some tax breaks, that doesn't mean you spend. You're not spending money you don't have, but you do give them tax breaks, and you make it so enticing that they would be foolish not to come. And we want to make sure, again, that every policy that we support from now on has the Americans first, and especially El Pasoans first focus. It has to benefit El Pasoans first, enough with funding the deep pockets of politicians. You should not be promoting to become a politician, and then you get elected and you forget about your district. That's not fair. All elections are local, even at the federal level, because it is the local people who choose their representatives. And of course, we are a republic, which means then the representative goes and represents you, but you do choose your representative in a democratic fashion, and that's with your vote.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Irene Armendariz Jackson, of course, the Republican nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District, representing essentially the urbanized parts of El Paso County and those areas at this point. More information about her website is Irene Armendariz.
You can just say Irene for Congress.
Or Irene for Congress. There you go. Irene for Congress there. Search that up as well. But again, information about what we're talking about here and her campaign. Of course, one of the other major issues that has been both, a focus nationally for years now, but also, of course, locally, specifically lately, has been immigration, border security, these connected issues that we have been dealing with here. So again, policy-wise, what you're looking to do if elected, what would be your major focuses and priorities if in office?
Enforce the law. We hear from the other side that it is so complicated and there's no solutions from the Republican side. The solution is very simple. Enforce the laws. If you want to talk about immigration reform, then we can have that conversation. But right now, for the safety of Americans, and that should be our focus, the Constitution itself says that the primary focus of the obligation of the government is to provide for the tranquility of its citizens. And I can guarantee you that nobody in El Paso is tranquil with the thousands of illegal aliens coming in every day. And you do feel sorry for their situation maybe at home, but they have to follow the process, and they are not following. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, and they follow the process, and they are extremely 100% against illegal immigration. And let me tell you why we're so against illegal immigration. Growing up, my dad worked in construction, and he hung drywall for a living. He had to leave months at a time, leaving my mom with the 4 children to be able to go look for work, because illegals would come and underbid the jobs. They would come and underbid the jobs, and there was no way that my dad could provide food for our table with that type of salary. And that's why I'm saying competition. You need competition amongst the industries. And so he would leave months at a time. And I miss my dad. I remember the last time he left, I was 19 years old, and I was so angry at him. And it wasn't his fault. He was trying to provide for our family. And so this is a very heartfelt issue for me. And my dad cannot be the only one. And let's remember that a civil rights activist by the name of Julio Cesar Chavez was 100% against illegal immigration. And again, we're seeing it here at the local level. Now we're talking about FEMA, right? FEMA providing the monies to reimburse for the buses of the illegals that were sent to New York and DC. And now they're saying, no, never mind, we're only providing 30%. We need to understand that FEMA has no money. It is our money. It is our money. So when you hear a politician say, I brought X amount of millions of dollars into the community, first they had to extract them from our community and then bring a sliver of them back. And I don't know you, Andrew, but myself, I'm tired of getting crumbs. If you work for the money that you earn, for your salary, you should be able to keep the majority and you decide who you want to help. If you want to help illegal immigrants, then you help illegal immigrants, but it should not be imposed. And this wound that we're feeling right now with the immigration crisis is self-inflicted. It is self-inflicted. We need to go back to enforcing the laws for the good and the safety of our own American children.
So, of course, with the local situation that we are dealing with right now, I mean, a major part of it, like you mentioned, there is the reimbursements and the level. But, of course, it's the local response overall, the fact that we are looking at on the order of low tens of millions of dollars, kind of in aggregate, at least $10 million being either forecasted or being spent right now at the city and the county level. And, of course, that has come at least partially from the lack of federal resources that have been made available here. So specifically then on the enforcing the law prospect of that here, of course, the amount of resources available when it comes to those law enforcement, ICE, CBP, Border Patrol, those kind of things has been notable in our area. And the kind of, again, lack of staffing, manpower, etc., in order to do the things such as, well, enforce the laws like you're talking about. So from that aspect, beyond even just the reimbursement part, again, if elected to office, what would you want to do? What kind of policies would you look to be putting into place when it comes to, again, just even the federal resources available, border wide, but particularly in our area?
Well, we definitely need to bring the resources. We want to get away from government dependency. Eventually, we definitely want to do that because then we'll be in this position if we have another president like the one we have right now that really doesn't care about border security and really doesn't care about border Americans, specifically El Paso. And this right now is evidence of the corruption within our community. And that, unfortunately, as we have all seen through the New York Post and now through national TV stations where they were instructed, the mayor was instructed, and by the incumbent, that the White House did not want them to declare a state of emergency that would have brought those federal funds. And remember, I want to reiterate that the government doesn't have the money. You and I are the money. But right now, it would have alleviated a little bit of the self-inflicted wound that by bringing those federal monies back to El Paso. So, I always say to my kids, to people that are around me, don't tell me you love me, show me you love me. And this is very evident of how much our local city council mayor cares about Americans, that he would succumb to the pressure of the incumbent and the president via the incumbent. They don't care about us. In El Paso, El Paso has voted. I know we've had this conversation of the voter turnout that is very low, but even that vote has not been appreciated by the Democrat Party because they don't care about us. They have done what they have done and they have continued to do it, false promises, and because El Paso is going to vote for them, even in the small numbers, just enough to get them elected over and over. They have slapped us in the face. They have spat in our face. And I think El Paso needs to say, enough, we need change. And that's something that, as we're knocking on doors and we're talking to voters, we had other slogans, help is on the way. We had really neat slogans. Okay. But as we're talking to people, even people that have voted Democrat for decades, say it is time for change. It's time for change. It is time for change. So we had to change. Why? Because the public, they mark what is important to them, and you can't hide it. You can try to push the focus on the previous administration. People don't care. People know every time they go and fill up their tank of gas, they know how much they paid. And just in case you forgot, on election day, Gas was $1.58 a gallon here in El Paso, and we have the receipts to prove it. We have the receipts to prove it. And right now, I just filled up yesterday. I filled up at Sam's, and it was $3.22. That's more than double of $1.58, and there's no end in sight. We need to make sure that we have a new set of legislatures that care about the American public. My phone number, I have always given it, and believe me, there's hate stuff that comes in. And my phone number, if you want to talk to me directly, if I don't answer, please leave a message, send me a text, 915-494-2851. I don't serve myself. If elected, if this is your position, El Paso, you call the shots. We represent you in Washington, but at the end of the day, we have to say, I've had enough. Things have to change, and the way things change is on November the 8th. If you voted Democrat your entire life. But another thing you need to understand, that does not make you a Democrat. In Texas, you don't register with a party. You just register. You don't need to change your affiliation. Just go on November the 8th. Early voting begins next Monday. Just go in and vote Republican. Vote Republican. Vote for change. Vote for change. You want things to change? We can have them change. You know, there is hope. There is hope in El Paso, but you need to vote for hope. And I am Irene Armendariz Jackson, and I will serve the people of El Paso. And the truth is that we receive so much hate from a few handful. And just yesterday, Andrew, they started attacking my children. And they started sending me emails and texts saying, we're going to find where your children's go to school. And they send me some very vulgar pictures. And they're memes. They're memes. They're not real pictures. They're vulgar. And why? My youngest is 15 years old. If you cared about children, why would you do that? If you didn't care, if you didn't think that we could win in El Paso, why would you do that? There is hate. But I will not stop. And actually, it has fueled my fire even more because it's not okay. We had our propaganda all over downtown. We paid to have our propaganda in a magazine. They stole the stands where this propaganda. They stole somebody's small business tools. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I know that I'm on the right side. I know El Paso is turning. I know El Paso is ready for a shift because El Pasoans are tired of the crumbs that we have received.
Again, guest right now has been Irene Armendariz Jackson, of course, Republican nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District, representing the urbanized parts of El Paso County. You got any information on her, IreneArmendarizJackson.com, or Irene for Congress as well. Make sure to find it there for the policies and the different positions we've been talking about here. And of course, as we're talking about this, the early voting does start on the Monday after we're recording this. So thank you very much for coming in to talk to us about these policies, about your perspective on them, and what you will do if elected to office here today.
Thank you so much. Again, if you want to reach out, 915-494-2851, 915-494-2851, or IreneForCongress.com. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to have to take that next break. Now, coming out of this break, of course, more talk about the local and important things, and of course, more election focus. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The 6 migrants who were victims of a shooting in Hudspeth County last month should be released from federal custody. That's according to a lawyer representing the 6 who are currently in ICE custody. One migrant was killed in that shooting, another critically wounded on September 27th outside of Sierra Blanca. 2 brothers, Michael and Mark Shepard, were arrested on charges of manslaughter. According to investigators, one of the brothers said they thought they were shooting at wild animals. An attorney at Las Americas, Zoe Bowman, said her clients have been traumatized by the incident and should be released. KFOX 14 confirmed Wednesday that the Shepherd brothers are in jail but are being held in separate facilities. The city of El Paso will start offering free COVID-19 testing kiosks across the city starting Friday. Most of the kiosks will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The tests are free for individuals who are symptomatic, have been exposed, or at high risk, regardless of insurance status. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On the I-10 westbound before Paisano, a stalled vehicle is blocking the left lane at Buena Vista Street. I-10 westbound at Porfirio on-ramp, an emergency vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. Mesa Street downtown at Wyoming, an accident reported, and a crash with police on the scene rushing drive at Trans Mountain. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warren Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vania Castillo. We are in for another beautiful day here in the Borderland, a little bit on the warmer side, even though we are starting a little bit cooler this morning. We are expecting to reach a high of 76 degrees in El Paso, 73 in Las Cruces, and we're expecting to see even warmer temperatures by the weekend. We are expecting to see those temps in the 80s sticking around here. We are expecting to see a little bit of rain, some 10 to 20% chance rain for your weekend, and some breezier conditions.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
KTSM and Southwest University invite you to the More You Know Expo, Sunday, October 23rd at Ascarate Park. Event is free for the entire family, plus register for your chance to win tickets to the Dallas Cowboys and other giveaways. Enjoy food trucks, live performances, face painting, inflatables, and more. Complete details at ktsm.com. The fun starts at 10 a.m. with the station that puts local first. KTSM 9 News.
It's showtime. The Las Cruces Lions Club presents the Fall Gun Show on Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd at the Las Cruces Convention Center. Buy, sell, and trade guns, ammo, knives, reloading supplies, and Western collectibles. Don't miss the #1 gun show in New Mexico. Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd at the Las Cruces Convention Center. Doors open at 9 a.m. All proceeds used to support local charities. We'll see you there.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690 KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, we are switching it up ever so slightly here today because we're trying to squeeze in a couple of the not exactly most requested, because I mean we kind of take requests to these kind of interviews, but ones that y'all have been talking about the most. Again, that interview, again, thanks to Irene Armendariz Jackson, nominee, keep saying candidate for the wrong reason, nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District on the Republican side of the ballot, for talking with her, going in depth on some of these issues, and a lot of comments coming in, including Robert Gable chiming in from New Mexico on this, and a lot of debate going on some of the specific points here. But I gotta say, one, regardless of any of the specific comments being made here, the idea of calling anyone's political ideology lock, stock, and barrel as morally indefensible I mean, let's just break that down as a comment into being no one who disagrees with me can possibly be right. The fact that it's possible to reject the idea that someone could disagree with you and still have moral backing or reasonable things behind there. I mean, it's just, how's that working out for you? I got to ask whenever it comes to trying to convince someone of your position, because I got to admit, it doesn't seem like it's going well. Just got to say that point out there. But in any case, appreciate the people who appreciate the coverage anyway. Again, just as a further making a point here, none of these interviews that we do are by any means endorsement or saying that you should consider our seal of approval or anything like that on any of these candidates. We're going to be delving into a lot of candidates on a lot of the different issues here. So if you like it, if you don't like it, if you agree, if you disagree with what they're talking about, if you appreciate the coverage for it, let us know. Some of those people, of course, leaving the comments and other things like this. Christy Couture, Ion Grimm, James Holmes, Angel Rueda, Ida Beza Gardner, Glenn Stewart, Richard Janisic, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes. It's not showing me all of them again for some reason, but if you're on there, do appreciate it. And again, a lot of appeals to authority happening there in a lot of ways. But so, of course, we are going to be taking some calls throughout the show, even though we have another interview coming up next hour. We'll squeeze in what we can before that. Again, the second segment of next hour, as we do, we'll be talking with the independent candidate for El Paso County Judge, Guadalupe Giner. So we will take a call or two at this point during the show and through that interview, well, up until it. So if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And some more comments coming in there, including Maria Common saying, I realized that I reside in a border town, but I failed to realize I was on the border of Haiti and Venezuela. I think reporting to some of these immigration patterns that we've been seeing. Not so much the Haiti issue that I've heard about here. That was more in the kind of like Del Rio, Eagle Pass kind of area where that was happening. But of course, yeah, the Venezuelan part of the local situation we have been dealing with, though I do have to say that at least some of the data that is coming out, again, particularly if you want to go and refer to the City of El Paso's migrant dashboard, showing that there has been, at least so far, I'm not going to try to jump the gun here by anything, but it seems like we might be on track for a marked decrease, well, starting last week, but more so even this week, because it is, well, a lot of different federal policies having come into place, including the use of Title 42 in this. I mean, the rolling 7-day average has a marked decrease to not quite the lowest level it has been seen earlier this year, but from, just to make the comparison, from last week, week 41 of the year, which is still a weird way to mark weeks, but I guess I get it, from about 4,446, which is slightly down from the previous week of 4,500 on the CBP in custody rolling 7-day average for our region. Currently, we're sitting at rolling 7-day average again for this week of 3,145. So by no means concluded, according to the data that we've got and we're looking at and is available, but a marked decrease that we will see, particularly since there are also the costs represented on there. Those numbers haven't changed because that's something that's going to be big announcements coming from if it happens. So, and again, a lot more comments coming on there, including Glenn Stewart on that idea. If things were so unbearable, wouldn't they just be happy to cross into one of the first 7 or so countries they walked through? Again, that's kind of a misunderstanding of the potential situation here. It has not been looked at as much with the Venezuelan thing. Like, I get your point here about the trek that we have heard of, but at the very least, I keep going back to the Haitian situation and some of the information that was coming out about that. That's, sure, a point of origin may have been Haiti and the island nation that it is, but the fact of the matter is that it wasn't necessarily the immediate previous point of origin or where people departed from during that point last year. Again, when we were seeing the incidents in, Del Rio and Eagle Pass and those parts kind of just on the other side of Big Bend is the way I consider it anyway. So there was actually like coordination going on about within these expatriate communities from their own countries about what next moves are. So I haven't seen much about that, really much research into it just yet for this current Venezuelan situation. But given just precedents and what has happened previously, it's not out of the question. So that's one of the things that I will be looking at to see more possibly what is going on with it here. So, like I said, we do have those phone lines open. We will be squeezing in a few calls in between our interviews here if you want to get on the line. And again, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We're going to go ahead and take that next break right now to get back on track, but at least a couple other things that I want to mention and local, including, well, one comment that came up about surprising, I think it was RJ that said it, surprised that certain issues didn't come up in this. We're focusing on what, okay, I'm still the host here, and there are a few issues that I consider most pertinent, but particularly, the abortion debates, how that is actually playing out here in Texas. Some interesting reporting on that we'll bring up, and again, a lot more after that, more after this break here on Talk El Paso. Again, that number one more time, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound before Paisano Drive, a stalled vehicle is blocking the left lane, stay to the right. Gateway North at East Yandell, an accident with police responding. And earlier crashes in the clearing stage, Gateway North at Dyer. And I-10 eastbound is slow from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot, 5-minute delays. Macomb Street still closed from the 54 Patriot to Stan Roberts due to an earlier crash. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Catch the show in the sky and help support the fight against cancer with the 4th annual Flight to Fight Cancer Research Awareness Fly-In on October 29th at the Doña Ana International Jetport, hosted by Francis Aviation and the War Eagles Air Museum, and powered by News Radio 690 KTSM and Sunny 99.9. Kicking off at 10 a.m. with skydiving, airplane exhibitions, and much more on the ground. Sponsored by Rise Federal Credit Union, A&B Labels, Great American Steak Burger on North Yarborough, and Papalog. Details on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Flight. Recognized by the American Cancer Society and a Relay for Life team.
When it comes to our judges, experience and qualifications matter. Justice Jeff Alley at the 8th Court of Appeals graduated in the top 10% of his law school class. He practiced law for 29 years before coming to the Court of Appeals, where he has been for the last 8 years. The only candidate in this race who is board certified in civil appellate law. A principled conservative who fairly applies the law as written. We need to keep Justice Jeff Alley at the 8th Court of Appeals.
Political ad paid for by Justice Jeff Alley in accordance with the voluntary limits of the Judicial Campaign Fairness Act.
Hi guys, it's Andrew with Northbrook Medical Clinic. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction and sick of the pills? Well, we now have a major medical breakthrough you are going to want to hear about. The wave technology at Northbrook Medical uses gentle pressure waves to repair and open up blood vessels. There are 60 clinical studies, including from Cambridge, showing our technology treats the root cause problem of ED without any pills. If you're ready to put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and regain your love life, grab your phone and call us now. You'll qualify for the assessment, the exam, even the blood flow ultrasound, if you can believe it, totally free. And to the first 10 callers now, you'll get a gift that can produce powerful and rapid results in the bedroom. You're going to love that, trust me, guys. This is a $650 value free to callers now. 915-529-9000. That's 915-529-9000. Guys, put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and get your love life back. Call Northbrook Medical Clinic now to qualify. 915-529-9000.
Staples offers tech solutions and accessories for learners, small businesses, and remote workers too. Right now, Apple AirPods Pro are only $199. You save $50. Offer ends 10/22 while supplies last. Limit 2. Explore the latest tech solutions at Staples, the working and learning store.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you all for tuning in, however you may be doing. So a lot of ways to communicate with the show, even if we're doing things ever so slightly differently today. Yes, we're taking some calls right now. Again, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. But in our consider it the usual interview slot, but in the second hour, so about the second segment, we're having our next political interview today. We're getting into that point where we might be doubling or, knock on wood, it's not going to happen, tripling up with interviews, but I'm not going to promise that's not going to happen because I'm not willing to say that at this point here. Point is, we got a lot of coverage we're going to be getting through. So again, thanks to our guest from this hour, Irene Armendariz-Jackson, Republican nominee for the Texas 16th Congressional District. Next hour, we'll be talking again with the independent candidate for County Judge Guadalupe Giner. So a lot of different points being brought up there. A lot of people chiming in, commenting. Maria Coleman, Glenn Stewart, Ed Clore, Eric McNabb, James Holmes, RJ, Flaco Jimenez, Maria Coleman, Glenn Stewart, Ione Graham, and a whole lot of other points being made there. And, the debate rages on. The Skeptic Squad is out in force today, along with the Thunderdome of comments. But let's get to at least a call or two here. We do have a Mary on the west side with us right now. Mary, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you just fine there. What's on your mind?
Oh, give me a moment because I think I had you on speakerphone. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
All right. Well, I wanted to call primarily. I did hear Irene's interview, and I just wanted to, say how I'm going to say what everybody might already know is how strong she comes across and how well spoken she is, and how strong her platform is. And I also wanted to comment on the other side, on Veronica's commercial that she's running, her commercials that she's running, where she's walking around downtown El Paso, nice, bright filming. Her production group has done a good job. But I'm like, what? Instead, that's false. Why is she walking around, showing off bright, clean El Paso when she's responsible for the illegal aliens coming across? I mean, she and her group, advocate for open borders, and she's been responsible. She's known to have paid her staff with campaign funds that's what I heard, to go down into Mexico to teach or coach these asylum seekers what to say and how to file for the asylum. So instead of walking around, I think instead of her walking around downtown showing off clean, bright El Paso, why doesn't she have a commercial showing herself surrounded by her illegal aliens that she's caused them to come up here? And I just say she's a liar. She was a liar when she was a county judge. She saddled us with that children's hospital, pulling at the heartstrings of El Pasoans, because all you have to tell an El Pasoan is that it's for the good of the children. Everything's for the good of the children, and then El Pasoans will go for it. And she saddled us with that county hospital for the kids. They still can't pay for it. They're still trying to figure out how to put it on a bond so that the El Pasoans will foot the bill for it. And she's up in Congress. What's she doing about that? She left us holding the bag. And, then she says in her commercial that she has worked to bring companies to El Paso. I want to know specifically what companies. Name them in a list. Why doesn't she name them in a list? What companies has she specifically caused or brought to El Paso? And then she says that she's worked to raise wages. What specifically has she done to raise wages? Why? Because Amazon came to El Paso, and their culture is to pay a little higher than minimum wage. So the things that all she's doing is pulling a page out of Joe Biden's playbook, the Democrat playbook, that she's lowered costs, medical costs.
Tell you what, you bring in some important points there, and tell you what, I'll address some of them here. We got to take that next break now to be able to hit the top of the hour. So tell you what, we will be taking more calls, so I thank you for the point in the call, and we'll keep those in mind because we have made invitations to all the congressional candidates in these races in our area. So again, appreciate the point in the call. We got to take that next break, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Reynolds, a collision there as two right lanes closed. Slow traffic on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot now up to 7 minutes. Disabled vehicles blocking the left lane on I-10 westbound before Paisano Drive at Buena Vista. And a down power line due to a crash this morning's closed Macomb Street between the 54 Gateway and Stan Roberts. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Joe Biden's inflation is crushing Americans. Higher costs for gasoline, painful prices at the grocery store. Just about everything costs us more. And just like Biden, Beto O'Rourke supports higher taxes that would crush Texans even more. What does Governor Abbott say?
In Texas, we are fighting back, cutting property taxes to help homeowners, producing more energy to lower gas prices. And we passed a constitutional amendment to ban an income tax in Texas.
This election, you have a choice. With Beto O'Rourke, it's higher taxes, higher prices, and an economy that's being crushed. With Greg Abbott, it's lower taxes, lower prices, and an economy that's booming.
If you're tired of getting crushed by Biden's inflation, join us and keep Texas strong.
Greg Abbott for governor.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio. I'm Brian Shook. COVID vaccines may soon be added to the childhood immunization schedule. Here's Dina Kodiak.
This after a CDC panel made that recommendation today for kids 5 to 11. The schedule isn't mandatory, but states do have the right to decide whether kids must get the jab in order to be admitted to school. The CDC vote was unanimous, 15-0.
Actor Kevin Spacey is being found not liable in a $40 million civil sex abuse case. Spacey was accused of making unwanted sexual advances against actor Anthony Rapp in his New York City apartment back in 1986. Rapp was just 14 years old at the time. On the stand, Spacey said he had no memory of the event, and he has repeatedly denied any misconduct. The Biden administration is looking for Congress to provide more money so prosecutors can punish those involved in the Capitol riot. However, time is running out before the end of the year. It's also unclear whether lawmakers will provide the $34 million sought by the Justice Department. More than 870 arrests have been made so far in connection to the riot. The stock market is closing lower as Treasury yields hit new highs. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yield reached a high of over 4.2% today, trading at a level not seen since 2008. The president is out with a plan to sell off more oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as a way to lower gas prices ahead of the midterm elections. Texas Republican Congressman Mike McCall says Biden is failing to prioritize domestic energy production, and that makes us look even weaker.
After the fall and debacle of Afghanistan, what did Putin see? Weakness. What does Chairman Xi in China see? Weakness.
High gas prices have been a thorn in the Biden administration's side for much of the year. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. There's more violence on the New York City subway. Lisa G. has the details.
Officials say a subway rider was attacked with a samurai sword just hours after another commuter was stabbed with a kitchen knife. The latest attack happened around 9:30 Thursday morning at Park Place and Church Street in Lower Manhattan. The victim is in the hospital while the suspect fled. This comes after a man was stabbed with a kitchen knife on a subway train at 72nd Street and Broadway Wednesday night. The victim is in stable condition and cops are still looking for the suspect.
A new poll finds healthcare is one of the top issues on voters' minds ahead of next month's election. A new Gallup survey found 87% say a candidate's plan to reduce the cost of healthcare is very or somewhat important to them. Further breaking down the numbers, 65% of Black adults say what a candidate will do to lower costs is key to them. Women also view the issue as more important than men. A University of Georgia sports legend is dead at the age of 100. Matt McClure reports.
University of Georgia officials confirmed Charlie Trippi passed away at his Athens home yesterday. Trippi starred in several roles while playing football for the Bulldogs, including running back, quarterback, defensive back, and punter. He was given the Maxwell Award for being the nation's most outstanding player in 1946 after he returned from serving in World War II.
The season 5 premiere of Yellowstone and the debut of the series Tulsa King will get a special preview in AMC theaters before debuting on TV. The two shows will be in over 100 AMC theaters on October 29th. Fans who dress like their favorite Yellowstone character can enter themselves in an online costume contest with a chance to win merchandise from the show. Yellowstone and Tulsa King both premiere on November 13th. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. WIN. That's WIN. Enter it now.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
3D printing, cyber defense, robotics, automation. This is advanced manufacturing, and it's El Paso's next frontier. One that our region has been building for years, and it's shaping us to be the hub for what the future holds, bringing a new era of progressive education, future-forward jobs, and higher wages. The next chapter starts now. Visit elpasotexas.gov/next frontier to see how our story unfolds.
From fuel injectors to intake valves to combustion chambers and beyond, your car's emission system takes a beating. It gets choked with baked-on carbon that affects your air-to-fuel ratio, slowing you down. You gotta keep it clean to get top performance, longer vehicle life, higher gas mileage, and to pass state emissions testing. Show your car some love with CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Yep, guaranteed to pass. Strong language for a strong product. And here's some more. Double your money back if you don't pass. You know it's gotta work. It's on the shelf at your favorite auto parts store, so grab some today. Expensive? Heck no. Hard to use? Heck no. Effective? You bet. Try it once, and you'll add it to your car a few times a year to keep things rolling just right. CRC Guaranteed to Pass Emission System Cleaner. Look for the box.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with experts in their field and the most interesting people across a variety of subjects. I release 4 episodes of Newt's World every week, with an effort to excite the imagination of our audience, and hopefully you'll learn something new each time you listen. Listen and subscribe for free to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of different comments, questions, and debates going on in the comments in its own right. But, of course, we'll keep that going, over on those social pages. But again, particularly just joining us, doing things a little bit differently here today. We are taking some calls right now. We'll keep getting to those. But coming up in the next segment, going to be having our second political interview of the day. We'll be talking with, again, independent candidate for El Paso County Commissioner, County Judge, rather, the right way to put it, Guadalupe Giner, and our interview with her. So a lot of other points being made there. Some of the people tuning in, chiming in, Ion Grimm, Eric McNabb, Glenn Stewart, Maria Kallman, John Brazelton, RJ, who I will admit, with us squeezing in interviews and me being a little bit bad about how we're having to do, again, slight change of our usual show structure here. Guilty as charged. I enjoy it, and we need to hear from the candidates. I do this because I enjoy it. I'm not even going to try and say that. No, it's just important. No, I like doing the interviews. If anyone had any compunctions or illusions about me not being that way, so that is part of the reason we do it. But I guess I do feel bad about us having to shift things up a little bit, even if it is for a good reason, and I will argue it is for a good reason. But also dropping those likes and reacts, we do appreciate. Eric Von Holz Osteen Rathlow, Calvin Williams, Ion Graham, James Holmes, Angel Rueda, Adebeza Gardner, Glenn Stewart, Richard Janicek. I do believe we also have was Maria Kalman on there. Again, it's not showing me quite the full list, but also Christy Couture. And do believe we have Flaco Jimenez and more. So, again, keep those going. Do appreciate it in its own right, and we'll keep taking those comments, particularly as they are relevant here. But let's squeeze in at least a call or two before we get to that interview. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, befuddled Ben here, and Andrew, thank you. Isn't it nice to hear from candidates for a change who are talking about taking care of us, the American citizens, instead of illegals from other countries?
I mean, it's the reason we're talking about the candidates, to get their different perspectives here, so it sounds like you appreciate that part.
And just to watch after the election, whatever things that might be slightly improving now will revert back to major problems for the American people if there's not a substantial gain in Republican representatives.
Potentially. I do think that there's at least somewhat of an expectation of, I mean, just looking historically speaking, whenever there is essentially midterm elections can be seen on as a referendum in part. I mean, there's also local issues, don't get me wrong, but on the performance or the perceived performance or public sentiment on that term of office for the major administration in the White House. So reading that on a bit, that's why I think there's been a lot of focus on different issues, and particularly a lot of, the phrase until or just after the election comes up in a lot of different ways, because, it will affect who therefore has control of the legislature.
Yeah, and this is from a guy, okay? This is from me, who just the other day said that Republicans, more than 50% of them got Fs or better in the Liberty score. Mm-hmm. And it is still a matter that the worst Republican, the worst of Republicans, is better than any of the Democrats. And we have to have a change.
I mean, that's, I think, definitely what's
my opinion.
Yeah, of course, and I take that as what your point there. But I mean, I'm just saying that, yeah, it does appear. I mean, again, just historically, and I mean, local issues still bear out. I mean, the whole argument about all elections are local that has been said a couple times today definitely bears out. But I mean, if it concerns you, I'll just use this as the further push that if any of these issues concern you, or you feel strongly in any direction, or even if you don't, you should still go out to the polls, particularly if you are registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, don't go vote, because that's illegal. But also make sure you're registered to vote for the next one, or I will find you.
Well, if El Pasoans go out, whatever the numbers, go out and vote, and they do not vote Republican for a change, getting rid of Escobar and Samaniego, we get what we deserve, unfortunately. And I happen to be one of those citizens. And, I'm getting to the point, I tell you, if I was a young person, and if this keeps on going with the increase in taxes and the increase in problems that we have, our roads and everything else, I think I'd be moving. I don't know where to, because I guess Florida, but I definitely would be moving out of the city. And unfortunately, I'm too old to do that right now, so I won't be doing that.
Well,
and last but not least, of course, let's go Brandon.
All right. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Thank you. And Irene, it was great, and Guadalupe is going to be better.
All right. Well, again, that interview coming up next year. So again, appreciate it. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, cool. In at least one more call before we do hit that. Again, we're going to be doing the interview next segment, so we got at least one more call we will get to here. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Okay, this is serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious as a heart attack. You cannot be serious, in the words of the great John McEnroe. I heard that the Alaskan state fisheries have shut down the whole Bering Sea because the snow crab population has been decimated by the ignorance of so many fellow humans that think they are so much smarter than nature. Now, I remember when I was a little kid and forced to read the Bible stuff. In Genesis, it said something that God gave all you humans the dominion over everything. Well, you humans are really making a mess of stuff. Well, I'll tell you what. If you keep on doing this thing, you don't have to worry about elections. You don't have to worry about gas and inflation and stuff like that. Your people need to get your duckies in line. That's my opening rant.
I have heard about the same things. I mean, the figures being putting in the, I think the more or less the articles I've read on the similar thing about billions of snow crabs missing, and that's why the Alaskan harvest has been shut down. So as much as I love those crab boil places that have popped up around town, yeah, I'm wondering how that's going to work out for them. And it does raise certain questions about our stewardship of the environment, and even beyond the other questions that have come up about, such as climate change. Not even going to touch that one right now, but more specifically, another factor that has been kind of simmering in the background, and yes, we're getting into Friday territory here, but this one's been bugging me for a minute, and I feel this is a good reason to bring it up. The fact that studies are showing that there is no place on Earth now where rainwater is considered safe enough to drink due to contamination, essentially. Rainwater. Not even talking about surface level water, but the amount of stuff that are, it's not exactly acid rain, but it's kind of in the same vein of the stuff that goes along with the water even when evaporated. So the fact that that has now come out here does bring up serious questions about, okay, even if we are going to go with the so-called religious perspective, as you brought up there, about that, yes, we've been given dominion over the earth, that about how we are treating something that is God-given, as if we are going to, therefore, yeah, it's fine if we destroy. We were given dominion, and yet. So, yeah, I have a lot of issues with that.
Oh, you definitely got that right, because it is serious with a capital S. But let me just follow up by just saying, I just heard Befuddled Ben, and he said that the worst Republican is better than any Democrat. Well, let me tell you something, Befuddled Ben. There was not one Democrat attacking the United States Capitol on January the 6th. And if you think that those are the best people to run the United States of America, you need to look in the mirror and take a real good look hard at your brain power. So that's all I want to say. You have a good day.
No, Frank, we appreciate it. You have a good one there. Appreciate the point in the call.
All right. You take care, Andrew.
You as well. Do appreciate it. I mean, I will say that I evaluate each candidate individually. I'm not in it for anyone's ideology, really. I mean, there's a reason that we do some of the questions we ask in the interviews, is I want to know what they are going to do about the problems they identify. Because again, it's one thing to say, oh, things are bad, or things should be better. Excellent. What are you going to do about it? Because their devil is absolutely in the details in all these situations. So that's kind of what we'll be getting into, again, into the next segment here. Again, slight change up for the way we have usually done it this time around, because we got the second interview of our day that we'll be getting into in this next segment, as we'll be talking with, again, Guadalupe Jenner, independent candidate for El Paso County, county judge, more specifically. So stay tuned for that and a whole lot more after this break. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Reynolds, a collision there as two right lanes closed. Slow traffic on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot now up to 7 minutes. Disabled vehicles blocking the left lane on I-10 westbound before Paisano Drive at Buena Vista. And a down power line due to a crash this morning's closed Macomb Street between the 54 Gateway and Stan Roberts. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
News Radio 690 KTSM and Scott Heating and Cooling want to provide a local veteran with a heating and cooling system upgrade. Tell us about a deserving veteran you know who would benefit from a free new refrigerated AC unit. Who are they? How have they positively impacted you, their families, and the community? Nominate a veteran you know today at ktsmradio.com.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
KTSM and Southwest University invite you to the More You Know Expo, Sunday, October 23rd at Ascarate Park. Event is free for the entire family, plus register for your chance to win tickets to the Dallas Cowboys and other giveaways. Enjoy food trucks, live performances, face painting, inflatables, and more. Complete details at ktsm.com. The fun starts at 10 a.m. with the station that puts local first. KTSM 9 News.
Hi, I'm Scotty Clark from Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. Did you know that about 70% of the heat transfer in your average home is through the ceiling? What that means is no matter what type of air conditioning system you have, insulation will make your home more comfortable. Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing has the ability to install closed cavity insulation, which can dramatically improve the performance of enclosed patios and converted garages. So call Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing for a free estimate at 595-4529.
Ad paid for by the Sentinel Group. Attention Marines, military personnel, families, and contractors who were stationed at Camp Lejeune. Were you present at Camp Lejeune between August 1953 and December of 1987? You may be entitled to significant compensation. For nearly 34 years, those in the Marine Corps' base Camp Lejeune were exposed to contaminated drinking water, resulting in devastating injuries, including several forms of cancer, adverse birth outcomes, Parkinson's disease, and more. North Carolina's procedural laws have prevented victims from getting the justice they deserve, but passage of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act of 2022 would allow you or a loved one to file lawsuits seeking compensation for illnesses and injuries linked to the toxic water. Call today for your free consultation. 800-484-9358. Let our experienced attorneys fight to get you the compensation you deserve, and you pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call 800-484-9358. That's 800-484-9358. Again, 800-484-9358.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. Of course, a lot of issues that we'll keep delving into here, but of course, our political coverage is going on strong in this season. So, turning now, we're going to be talking about another one of the local races. Joining us here in studio, we do have Guadalupe Giner, the independent candidate for El Paso County Judge. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to do so, because talking about the competitive elections, as there are many that aren't, and even candidates of different stripes here, is very important, making sure people know what is on the ballot and the issues there. So, of course, we've talked with you previously in around the primary season as you had your own process here. So for those who may not be familiar or missed that previous interview, please reintroduce yourself and talk a little bit about, your background.
Okay. I am Guadalupe Giner, and I'm running as an independent candidate for El Paso County Judge. And what that means is that I'm not running with either party. And there's a process to get on the ballot. It's 500 signatures on a petition, and we were able to do that. And we understand that we are the first person in the state of Texas in history to ever run for county judge as an independent. So we've already made history there. It's very hard to get that verified, but we have not been able to find anyone else that's been able to do it. So we're really excited about running as an independent. And I decided to run as an independent because I want to bring together both sides of the aisle. And I want to implement meaningful change. And I think sometimes when we ally ourselves with a party, the other side doesn't want to work with you. So I'm hoping that by being an independent, people will listen to what I have to say and then make a decision on whether they want to vote for me or not, and not look at the party or anything else like that. So we are running as an independent. I'm running for that reason, to try to unite the county. If you look at the national politics and you start talking about that, the other side is going to get turned off. So I don't want to focus on those things. I want to focus on what's good for the county, and that's what I decided to run.
Okay, of course, your platform here, people can find over on GuadalupeForElPaso.com. You have a few main points here. And of course, one of the ones that is, it probably feel like the most common conversations involving the county here is a reducing of taxes.
Yes.
I feel like there's been a particular focus on it during this election cycle. So specifically policy-wise, what will that look like? What will that involve, again, if elected to office, in the reduction of taxes?
Well, everybody has to follow rules and laws.
Mhm.
And when you look at the role of county judge, there is a Texas Constitution that delineates what your responsibilities are.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've been looking at and I dig into and I watch all the meetings is that there seems to be a lot of things that have been added into county government that are not delineated by the Texas Constitution.
Mhm.
So anytime you're going to create a program or a department, that's going to take more tax dollars to run. So one of the things I want to look at, I have experience, 20 years experience in purchasing, planning, and budgeting. And my job was to save my company money. And so I want to take that experience for my Fortune 500 company, private company, 20 years, what I learned on how to save money and apply it to the county. And we do that, but making sure that we're streamlined, that we're sticking to what the Constitution says we're responsible for providing to the county. And then when you do that, that's when you start to kind of get a little bit more streamlined because now you got to focus. Now, not if you're all over the place, you're not going to be able to drop taxes. So what I want to do is look at the Constitution, make sure that we're adhering to that in what we're providing as far as services to our taxpayer. And that'll allow us to bring down, and this doesn't mean layoffs because I get this all the time. It doesn't mean layoffs. It just means that you make sure that you're providing the services that we're supposed to provide and not going outside that scope. Once you do that, guess what? Your government gets smaller. Andrew, I was looking at the budgets
Mhm.
for the county government in 2016. The budget was $322 million budget. Okay. Now it's $544 million.
Mhm.
And that's in 7-8 years. And the population of El Paso hasn't really grown. And so when you look at that, you say, okay, well, why is it growing then? It's not that they're trying to serve more constituents. So that means that they're adding more departments, more layers to county government. And so we need to be real careful with that because we're one of the poorest communities. And right now, my goal and what I hear all the time, I'm not hearing anything but taxes, taxes, taxes. And so we need to give the county constituents a tax cut. And you have to make sure that you're providing only what the Constitution says in order to control what you're doing. Because if you don't have a law or some kind of a statute that you're following, it's going to be very easy to keep adding and keep growing government. And it just can't happen anymore. So I want to get in there, apply what I learned at that Fortune 500 company, 20 years. One of my job responsibilities was saving money.
Mhm.
And I was very good at what I did. And I want to apply it to county government. And I believe that we can come up with a tax cut, not just a tax, they keep saying no new revenue tax. That's great, but we need to provide a tax cut for our constituents and put more money into their pocket because they're hurting. They're hurting. And so that is my plan. Lots of other things, to use technology. For instance, in the private sector, we found out during COVID that many employees prefer to work from home. Well, the county has a lot of leased buildings with lots of employees on them. That's another way we can save money. So I actually have a plan that I want to implement in order to slowly start bringing county government within the confines of the Constitution, and at the same time work towards giving county taxpayers a tax cut.
Of course, related to, the county budget itself, as you were mentioning, some of the budgetary numbers on there, County Commissioner's Court has a lot of oversight over a lot of other taxing entities.
Yes.
One of the more notable ones, most recently, has, of course, been the County Hospital
Correct.
District, UMC, and the progression of that bond, originally certificate of obligation, potentially in the future as a general obligation, as in going on the ballot type of bond.
Correct.
So when it comes to those kind of departments here, and of course, in relation to that bond as was proposed, what will be your, again, if elected to office, perspective or attitude towards those entities and your decisions towards them?
So what I want to say, and this is why it's very important, because we were just talking about this on the website. One of the most asked questions is, do you have a degree in law? And no, I do not. Because the county judge position, although it has the word judge in it, it's not judicial.
Right.
It's more like the CEO of the county. So when it comes to UMC, it's important that we know budgeting and that we have a plan. And I was very against the 400 million or 345 million, whatever it ended up being, because they were going to try to issue it as debt. And a little bit of background for your listeners. So UMC has almost $500 million in debt right now. And 250 million of that was not voted upon by voters. It was just debt. Okay. The other 250 was put up for an election and it was accepted by the voters. Now you're going to add another, let's call it 400 million for ease of adding, let's call it. You're talking $1 billion in debt for a hospital system. And I actually, again, I'm going back to the Constitution because there has to be something that guides us in the future. And in the Constitution, it says that UMC, which is called a medical hospital district, is its primary purpose is to serve healthcare to the indigent. The word they use here is needy. And what worries me about what they're trying to do, because they actually want to create a cancer center, an ambulatory surgery, which is elective surgery. What worries me is that now you're competing with the private sector. And that's not what the mission of UMC is. So when I look at that and I say, okay, well, you want all this money for all these new programs. Well, you have a budget. Why wasn't that put into the budget slowly? Why do we have to take out 345 million, whatever it was, to quickly put these programs in place? That's number one. So as the CEO, right, that would be my question to them. Where is it on the budget? What are you doing? And it's not just 1 year to year budget. It has to be 5, 10 years. There has to be a vision on the part of UMC as to what they want to do so that you can slowly incorporate what they see their vision to be within the confines of the Constitution. Well, unfortunately, they wanted to do it all at once. It competes, in my book, it competes with the private sector. And this is why this is not a good thing. Most of the medical advancements that we have come through the private sector. If you start to have a UMC type hospital take business from the private sector, it takes away the incentive to come up with new ways of doing things because nothing ever comes through the private sector as far as medical. No new developments. Most new developments come from private investment and enterprise. So my fear is that when we start giving all this competition over to UMC, which I believe in one of the presentations, the CEO of UMC, Jacob Cintron, mentioned that 70% were paying customers with insurance. Well, if that's the case, well, then that's UMC has way exceeded its mandate from the Texas Constitution. And again, it's about competition. And I get a lot, well, you know, capitalism. Okay, I think it was Winston Churchill. He said, capitalism is the worst form of government, except when compared to any other form of government. So if you want to have the best healthcare, which we do in the world, and you want to continue to have that, then we need to adhere to what the Constitution says. UMC's primary purpose is to provide care to the indigent. And so when you ask me my opinion, obviously, I would really insist that they have to have a vision for the county hospital. We need to look at how that adheres to the Texas Constitution and what we're allowed to do with that. And then we have to create a plan. And I'm not saying that some of these programs they wanted to do are not going to be implemented, but we certainly need to do a better job of planning for that. So again, this is why it's the CEO of the county, together with the Commissioners Court. We need to see a plan from every single entity that reports into the County Commissioners Court. And it's not just UMC. You know, you've got the sheriff's budget, you've got the court's budget, you got lots of budgets coming in through that. And so that's why this position is very important, that you understand the financial aspects of budgeting and what that means. And honestly, the taxpayer just cannot take anymore. And so we need to recognize that. We serve them, and we need to remember that. And when we're doing that and we're making decisions, we need to say, how is this going to impact the taxpayer? Because they're not a piggy bank. We can't always go to them for everything we have. We have to be smart about how we budget, and we can do that. And so that is how I feel about the UMC. And that's what I want to do when I get in there. And again, apply all these things that I learned in the private sector about budgeting and planning, commodity forecasting. I did all those things. And those things can transfer over to a county government. I truly feel strongly that I can bring fiscal responsibility to that position.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Guadalupe Giner, independent candidate for the El Paso County Judge. If you want to find out any more information about her positions, Guadalupe for elpaso.com. Of course, you've got a few other important ones here, and at least two more that I want to focus on here. Don't want to skip over them. You mentioned the Sheriff's Department, and security is one of your platforms as well, including Protect Personal Freedoms. But two more in the time we got left I want to focus on here is, essentially security and and international security, of course, what the county has been involved with because of the issues we've been seeing with border security and immigration, seeing some of the local funds being spent, particularly from the county side, on setting up of some facilities, including specifically one of the migrant welcoming and or processing centers of the $6 to $7 million range there. When it comes to that and the response here, outside of any particular facility we're talking about, just kind of in general, if again elected and still having to deal with this situation with the kind of lack of resources federally being provided, and questions about reimbursement, all of these swirling issues, how would you go about handling or tackling that?
Well, we can't use local tax dollars to address federal failures. That's just not possible. And when we talk again about that Texas Constitution, guess what? It doesn't mention immigration once. So I don't understand why county government, city government is involved in this. Unfortunately, decisions being made in Washington, D.C. are forcing our local taxpayers to spend money to address them. And so it's not an easy situation. I did go and I did speak with a lot of these migrants that had come in, the illegal immigrants that had just been processed by the Border Patrol. And so I think I have a pretty good handle. I mean, they all want to come for the same reason. We are the best country in the world. I don't care what anybody says. We still are, and they want to be here. But, they have to do it. There has to be a correct way, a legal way of doing that. But so how would I respond? I actually have three. I would declare a state of emergency. And why? We have other counties in Texas that have already done this. And it frees up state dollars. And I saw in different articles that they were saying, well, the state dollars are the same as the federal dollars. I don't know if that's true or not, but when you say you have a state of emergency, you're going to get some focus from the state government and the Governor Abbott. So that would be my first one. I would stop covering the cost of processing. So here's what I know about the county. The city is different.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the county has already opened a processing center at a cost of almost $7 million. They contracted for 1 year with a company called Providencia. And then they signed a 2-year lease for a building on Lockheed. We already are seeing that dip in the illegal immigration coming.
Right.
But now the county government has involved itself in contracts that are long-term. So number one, they should have never been involved in the immigration. I like what the mayor did, put them on a bus and ship them out to the different places they wanted to go to. Because talking to them when they were downtown, they all wanted to go to New York. Most of them wanted to go to Miami. And so bus them out and let El Paso's problem become the United States problem. Because that's once they got to New York started feeling the heat. It's not easy to provide for these people. They require a lot. So I don't believe they should have done that. They're stuck now with 2 contracts. And if this immigration thing was a surge, this illegal immigration is going to haunt them for a year to 2 years, depending on what you're looking at. From watching the commissioner's courts meeting, the directive was giving also to look into a sheltering facility. Now, if you think an immigration processing center is expensive, sheltering illegal immigrants is very expensive. I heard a number of 5 times more expensive. 5 times more expensive than just the processing. And they didn't move forward to that, to my knowledge. But they were looking at that. And I thought, how is it possible? And they kept saying FEMA, and they use the word reimbursable. But here's what I've learned from watching these meetings. I know UMC is owed the last time, if I remember correctly, $12 million from FEMA through the COVID process. Don't ask me what that's for. $12 million. It's very hard to find any information on UMC financials. They haven't been reimbursed, and it's been a year. The county government is owed $4 million by FEMA for over a year, and they still haven't been reimbursed. For them to spend this kind of money and say we're going to be reimbursed when they have not even been reimbursed for something that happened a year ago, I think it's just it makes me a little bit anxious, because this is money that we need to look at as taxpayer money, not county money. This is money that the taxpayers paid for roads, for healthcare, for all kinds of things that the county government is responsible for, and yet we're using it for a federal issue, hoping that the federal government is going to reimburse us. So I would not have done that. I would have not opened the processing center. I would have put them on buses and I would have shipped them out to make our problem everybody else's problem.
Related to that, and of course, talking about federal funding in its own way and responses to previous situation, of course, the pandemic response, as you both have in your website and has been talked about by our audience, and both the impacts on, business limitations, shutdowns in some cases, it's been put as well as the economic impact. So kind of a two-part question here for our last one. Both, how would you handle a situation should it come up anywhere similarly, again, not necessarily referring to COVID, but any other level of public health emergency, but then also what needs to be done to overcome the economic impacts that we have seen from the situation as it happened?
Well, let's talk about what we would do if this would happen again. And in all fairness, I don't think anybody knew what was happening when COVID first hit. So we know that, we get that. But, the last few weeks of COVID, when Governor Abbott opened up the state of Texas, El Paso County was resistant to opening up. And so what we've learned a lot. Number one, I would say we need to get together a group of people that, and let's just say we don't know if it's going to be a health emergency, right? Any kind of emergency.
Sure.
We put together a panel of experts, we bring them in and we get their opinion, but we also have to bring in business representatives from small, medium, and large businesses, because we cannot impact the economy the way we did before. We have to always keep in mind that people are making a living from their jobs, from their small businesses, which we now know 30% of those businesses disappeared forever because of the pandemic. So we need to get together and we need to take into account that any decision we make has to be looked at in a way that will not shut down our economy completely, that it will allow these small businesses to continue to do business. Take that into account when we're responding to these emergencies. The other thing I want to say is that as leaders, we need to project hope in the future. So in addition to making sure that our businesses are not impacted long-term, that they remain open, because we talk about personal freedoms, right? I don't feel like as a county judge, I have the ability to shut down a business. I also want to make sure that we project hope, that we're transparent with what we're saying, that we have input from various sources, and that we move forward with a plan that is good for the economy, for protection of our citizens, and also project and say, this is difficult, but we're going to be better on the other side, and we're going to make sure that you're taken care of. And so we have to project that confidence that things are going to be okay. Now, I'm sorry, tell me the second part of your question.
So again, the brief part of the other question is then basically what needs to be done to overcome the impacts that we're seeing by businesses and the economy in our local area?
That's very difficult to do. A lot of these, I did spend a lot of time with smaller businesses, and a lot of them are family owned. So when we shut down businesses, the entire family was out of a job. And I asked them about what we can do to help. I think we definitely need to make sure that we stay out of their way as a government. Let them make their business and do business the way they feel best. We got to reduce the fees and taxes, anything that impedes them growing or even opening or starting a business. But as far as how we're going to help them, I'm not a big proponent of using government to, fund the money. If we have federal dollars, obviously we need to use those for whatever the federal government has given to us. But I think that we need to, when we drop taxes, because the taxes don't just affect individuals, it affects businesses. When we can put more money in the pocket of business owners, guess what? They're going to want to expand. They're going to want to open. And we have to show, if we want to attract big businesses, big companies, then we need to show that we have a low tax environment and that we're business friendly. And I don't think we give off that message right now. So that's what I would do. I would continue to lower taxes, make sure that it's also kind of trickling down to our business owners, make sure that the county government is not in the way of expanding businesses by, asking for things that are just not necessary. And just promoting that, hey, you know what, come here, open. We're not going to get in your way. We are going to be pro-business, and we're going to make sure that your taxes are not an impediment to the growth of your business or your starting of a business.
Again, guest right now has been Guadalupe Giner, independent candidate for El Paso County Judge. Again, you want to find out any information about her positions, the platform we've been talking about here, Guadalupe for ElPaso.com. Also, similarly on social media, right?
Correct.
Okay, so find them there. And again, thank you very much for coming in today to speak to us about, again, these issues and some of the other things facing our county and this position if elected again here today.
Well, thank you for having me on again, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Absolutely here. So that'll lead us through that next break now. So coming out of this next break, we will go ahead and keep talking about these issues and a whole lot more. Of course, the politics definitely dominating this season. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The 6 migrants who were victims of a shooting in Hudspeth County last month should be released from federal custody. That's according to a lawyer representing the 6 who are currently in ICE custody. One migrant was killed in that shooting, another critically wounded on September 27th outside of Sierra Blanca. 2 brothers, Michael and Mark Shepard, were arrested on charges of manslaughter. According to investigators, one of the brothers said they thought they were shooting at wild animals. An attorney at Las Americas, Zoe Bowman, said her clients have been traumatized by the incident and should be released. KFOX 14 confirmed Wednesday that the Shepard brothers are in jail but are being held in separate facilities. The city of El Paso will start offering free COVID-19 testing kiosks across the city starting Friday. Most of the kiosks will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The tests are free for individuals who are symptomatic, have been exposed, or at high risk, regardless of insurance status. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 westbound after Trowbridge, that crash has cleared. All lanes are back open. That's the good news. The not so good news, the I-10 westbound stacked up. 10-minute delays, bumper to bumper, Hawkins to the 54 Patriot. I-10 eastbound, Trans Mountain to the Patriot, it's a 10-minute delay. Eastbound on the spur between the Gateway and the Loop, it's a 10-minute delay. And an injury accident Gateway North at Paisano Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warren Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vania Castillo. We are in for another beautiful day here in the Borderland, a little bit on the warmer side, even though we are starting a little bit cooler this morning. We are expecting to reach a high of 76 degrees in El Paso, 73 in Las Cruces, and we're expecting to see even warmer temperatures by the weekend. We are expecting to see those temps in the 80s sticking around here. We are expecting to see a little bit of rain, some 10 to 20% chance rain for your weekend, and some breezier conditions.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Well, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in there. Some of those dropping those likes and reacts, which we do appreciate in its own form and order, just because there's been so many comments. So, Flaco Jimenez, Calvin Williams, Amber Banda, Christy Couture, Matt Olson, Hector Chavia Jr., Stephanie Soto Guerrero, Eric von Holstein Rathlau, James Holmes, Ida Beza Gardner, Ion Grimm, Glenn Stewart, Angel Rueda, Robbie Flores, Richard Janisic, and Monica Cervantes. Again, there's a lot of stuff we're talking about here. Just have to address a couple of misconceptions going on in the comments coming from one particular source is that this candidate we had, again, thanks to both from this past hour, but 2 hours, but the most recent candidate, Guadalupe Hiner, is literally on the ballot as an independent, and she went through the process to do so here in El Paso. So any questions about her qualifications or mislabeling as such, literally take a look at the ballot for yourself, and that's literally going to be what's by her name, because the county judge seat is a partisan election, so to run outside of the party infrastructure takes actually a lot of extra effort here, as she mentioned, actually having to fill out a petition, which, let's just say, when you look at some other of the local races, particularly on the city side, which we'll also be delving into, make no mistake, all you really have to do is pay the filing fee. So that's part of what's going on there. And also, this is a diehard radio station, so anyone expecting that any other outside company is having any influence on what we're choosing or what we're talking about is, well, need you to read basic contracts, my dude, and understand what some of the names are, like what the thing at the end of the hour says, and that should clear up some of those factors for you here. Any case, got a whole lot more comments coming in, but we've also got a couple of phone calls. Hope you'll be patient on the line that we want to get to here before we get to the end of the program here. So we do have Raul in Northeast on the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, as you know, yesterday I couldn't get through. So I was, as I was saying, what affects El Paso, our local government, our city and county politicians, is the political campaign contributions from the El Paso's plutocrats. And again, as you know, Dr. Kathy Stout and some of her associates have written a book on that, where they, list the campaign contributors and who they are and who they give money to. And it seems like these plutocrats can always buy enough politicians to get the policies they want, and thus you get corporate welfare like the rich boys' toys, like the losing money ballpark here. And no one I know wanted it, and I'm sure if a referendum on those specific moves of tearing down City Hall to put a ballpark on it, it would have lost. And all the folks out here in Northeast El Paso that I ran into, I didn't find any who were for that issue. And that was a big issue at the time when I decided to run for office. And on top of the fact that the incumbent, I thought, since there was no Mexican American running for the race, that I might have a chance for that seat, in a city where most of us are Mexican Americans. So when I filed, soon afterwards, the plutocrats found themselves a Hispanic entrepreneur to run against me. And they had already found somebody to run against Carl Robinson. They found a guy who had a college degree to Carl Robinson's public high school diploma. They found a guy who was a retired officer to Carl Robinson's having just been a non-com. And they found a guy who was an entrepreneur, again, compared to Carl Robinson, who, had been a government employer. So that's what happened there. And those two guys got their money from the plutocrats. I didn't get any money from them, and I know they certainly didn't want me in there. And that's what happens in El Paso. And it's been the same story since I'm 72 years old. This city has been run by a plutocracy of wealthy, predominantly white businessmen in El Paso from the west side of town. And again, they can always find enough Tio Tacos and I guess Uncle Tom's to do their bidding.
I mean, the campaign contributions are a matter of public record. And again, El Paso Matters has been doing some interesting delving into that. They're much better suited than we are in order to really delve into the data on that / reading those kind of things makes a way better presentation than we could do on the radio. We dip our toe into some of the general numbers because I think that's all we can really bear out. If you can't see the numbers, they get a little ephemeral. So that's kind of why we focus it on the way we do. And they do a very good job when we appreciate their coverage of it, including pointing out some of the different funding sources for some of these campaigns, particularly in District 1. I know that has come up both in some of the other comments and other things. So I will say that it is absolutely someone's right to be able to fund the campaigns that they see fit. But let me just say, if again, Magic Wand time, if I could, some of those decisions such as Citizens United and related things when it comes to the whole unlimited money and the birth of the super PAC, dark money, all those things are, I don't think necessarily healthy for a well-represented democracy like we're supposed to have in order to make that not working out that well. So, I mean, yeah, the book, and again, we've had Kathy Stout on previously talking about the Who Rules El Paso book that you're referring to there, because it's an interesting analysis of just the local situation, and, well, people want to be informed about it. Of course, these campaign finance numbers are public, so a lot of questions people bring up in a lot of other ways for who's supporting campaigns can be looked at. Kind of have to look at the right place, and I don't necessarily fault anyone for not knowing the exact details, but it can be looked up, and again, local reporting concerns on that. So thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. Squeeze in one more call before we hit the end of the show here. We do have Hans on the east side with us. Hans, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Hey, I was getting ready to head over to the League of Women Voters that they're having a debate tonight for the candidates, and I just heard that Judge Samaniego backed out again, and as a result, he will not debate Guadalupe. So I thank you for your show where I was able to hear from her. Judge Samaniego backed out 2 times, 2 events that I was going to go to. I don't know why he's such a big chicken, but I do remember when during COVID, they all hunkered down and they hid out. And so I guess I'm calling them out. And why doesn't he debate Guadalupe? And I really thank you, Andrew, for putting both of the candidates on today, Irene and Guadalupe. We got to hear a lot from them, and I really appreciate it. And it's motivated me to go block walk and talk to my neighbors and get them out to vote.
Well, I am happy if anyone gets activated by this for whatever your position is, just to do something. That's miles ahead of where a lot of people are in voters, specifically in El Paso. So, hey, I appreciate the thought, and thank you for letting us know.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care.
You as well. So, of course, we're going to hit that next break. Now, I want to mention 2 things here real quick. That, yes, that El Paso West Side Candidate Forum is happening at the State Line Restaurant, 1222 Sunland Park Drive, and it's starting at 6, so you can still head out there. Doors open at 5:30, and that's, of course, put on by the League of Women Voters. Also, one other thing I want to mention, it's El Paso Giving Day. I meant to say it at the top of the show, but but with all of the things we're working in today, I forgot at least one thing. So it's El Paso Giving Day. So, of course, you can find out the details on that and, where you can do some of your own charity work and help supporting our own parts of the region if you really want to, because there's a lot of good stuff that happens in our area. So it's elpasogivingday.org to support your favorite local nonprofit and community organizations. But got to take that break. Coming out of this break, tell you what coming up for you on the show and close it out. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
It's all stop and go on the I-10 westbound from Hawkins to the Patriot with 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound Trans Mountain to the Patriot, it's a 9-minute delay. Slow traffic still on the spur, 601 eastbound on the Liberty Expressway Gateway to the Loop. It's a 7-minute delay. There's a crash slow in traffic eastbound Edgemere at Rich Beam, and Macomb still shut down from the 54 Gateway to Stan Roberts from that earlier crash. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Under Governor Abbott, Texas leads the nation in creating jobs. Law enforcement officers are respected and funded, and Governor Abbott is fighting to secure the border. Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Thanksgiving is more than cranberry sauce. It's about turkey. The 46th annual Turkey Trot. Put your running shoes on and meet us at the corner of St. Vrain and Montana. There's a 5K and a 1-mile fun walk, all to benefit our local YMCA. For registration info, go to elpasoymca.org. That's elpasoymca.org. Or at 6 a.m. on race day, Thanksgiving Day, November 24th. Trot on.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for the program. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We are incredibly out of time here for this show. We've crammed a lot in, but of course, the reason I was also not as feeling bad about taking up all this interview time is Friday is coming. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and Free for All Friday is what we do, and what that means is that we take on all the comments and calls, as many as we can cram into 2 hours of the program. Anyway, so we'll make up for lost time with the calls there. So if you put up with us today, I do appreciate it, as a lot of people have. And of course, again, do it tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m., as we do every Monday through Friday. So, well, if you really want to make your other comments on the candidates or the other issues that we'll also be discussing here, because we do have more candidates. Invitations have been made to basically anyone that we've talked with. We've tried to reach out to the opponent in the race as well. And we got more of those coming up. So all of that and more to come. So I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. So in the meantime, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
It's all stop and go on the I-10 westbound from Hawkins to the Patriot with 10-minute delays. I-10 eastbound Trans Mountain to the Patriot, it's a 9-minute delay. Slow traffic still on the spur, 601 eastbound on the Liberty Expressway, Gateway to the Loop, it's a 7-minute delay. There's a crash slow in traffic eastbound Edgemere at Rich Beam, and Macomb still shut down from the 54 Gateway to Stan Roberts from that.
Politicians have led us down the wrong path. Record inflation and cost of living, unsafe border communities, a war on oil and gas jobs. Enough is enough. Catherine Parker will uphold our Texas values. A successful businesswoman and rancher, Catherine Parker will lower inflation and our cost of living. Catherine Parker will work to permanently lower your property taxes. Catherine Parker will stand up to the radicals who threaten our values and put our families in harm's way. Catherine Parker will secure our border communities and fully fund border security. Catherine Parker will stand with law enforcement and against those who want to defund our police, because our communities deserve to be safe. And Catherine Parker will defend the oil and gas jobs that power our communities. Truth, freedom, prosperity. Vote Catherine Parker for District 74 on November 8th. Political
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is denying an emergency bid by some Wisconsin taxpayers to block the student loan debt forgiveness plan by the Biden administration. Barrett acted alone, denying the request, which comes after the Brown County Taxpayers Association urged the Supreme Court to rule the plan illegally intrudes on Congress's spending power. Republicans are vowing to fight back against a new COVID vaccine recommendation from the CDC. The health agency recommended the shots be added to the childhood immunization schedule. Doug Mastriano is running for governor in Pennsylvania, and he said the Commonwealth will not mandate the COVID vaccine no matter what the CDC says. Before the decision was made, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton tweeted, "Such a move would destroy any shred of credibility the CDC still has." Actor Kevin Spacey is being found not liable in a $40 million civil sex abuse case. Lisa G. reports.
Spacey was accused of making unwanted sexual advances against actor Anthony Rapp in his New York City apartment back in